Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bases Loaded right here on Texas Football. I'm your host, Blake Munroe, where I'm joined every week by Jeff Howe and CJ Vogel. And guys, it's finally here. It's opening weekend. We're going to get into the UC Davis thing here in a minute. We previewed the team last week. All the preseason rankings are out. Texas is a consensus top 10 team, coming in number 3 in the majority of them, number 8 in the other. That's quite a discrepancy when you really think about it, but that's a whole other issue. And we touched on that in last week's episode, but I wanted to look at this before we really get into this weekend. And D1 Baseball came out with their position rankings. For those that are listening, we can kind of go through them a little bit, but for those that can see it on screen, I mean, guys, you got a ton of players listed on that sheet right there. And that's not I mean, there are a lot. And that's, position by position. You got relief pitcher, starting pitcher. You got all your, it's not like infield and you have a couple. I mean, these are by each position. And there is a Texas player listed pretty much at every position.
Yeah, you have to like it. And, Jeff, I want to hit real quick, but, I mean, look, all 3 of the guys that will be starting games this weekend mentioned here. You have a number of guys in the bullpen as well. When we talk to you about just how deep both Schlossnagle and, the 3 of us think this rotation and bullpen could be, I think it's pretty, it's put into perspective quite a bit here on this graphic with how many arms are mentioned here.
Yeah, I really like Thomas Burns at the back of the bullpen. I think you've got some power arms back there that have a chance to be the guy. And I know Schloss doesn't like to use the term closer. They've got different guys that'll be in that role that can just come in a critical spot and get you 3 outs or get you out of a 2-on, 2-out jam, whatever the case is. We talked last week in our season preview about kind of ceiling raisers, like, hey, who are the guys that can raise the ceiling of this team? I don't know. I could be off on this. If Adrian Rodriguez is like a borderline top 10 shortstop in college baseball, this team's competing for a national championship. That's the one to me that sticks out.
Yeah, I like that. Real quick, I'll add on Thomas Burns as well. He said he's added a splitter this offseason. He's been working with Max Wiener. Of course, he says it kind of replaces that of a traditional changeup. But, of course, when you're pumping high 90s, 99, 98, 100 in that range, of course, adding any type of off speed with movement and control, obviously, is going to be something that factors into how much you see him towards the back end of ball games as well.
I just want to clarify real quick, like on A-Rod, like the bat will play, like he proved that last year, but defensively, if he's like, a top 10 to 15 guy defensively at shortstop, then yeah, you've got a chance to have one of the better infields, I would think, in the country if he's that type of guy.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, let's just do top 15. We'll just make that the cutoff there. You got Carson Tenney, number 3 catcher, Ethan Mendoza, number 8 second baseman, Adrian Rodriguez, number 12 shortstop, Aiden Robbins, number 10 outfielder, Dylan Volantis, I believe, number 6 starting pitcher, Thomas Burns, number 8 relief pitcher, Max Grubbs, number 12 relief pitcher. I mean, even if we just stopped at the top 15 guys at each of these positions, that's impressive in itself. I think they ended up going to like 150, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you consider how many teams and how many players there are, especially at certain positions. But I mean, if we just did the top 15 and cut out the rest of the list, it's still a very impressive list.
No, without doubt. And that kind of speaks to, the star power, if you will, in the lineup. And of course, the arms that we've talked about. In regards to what's expected this weekend, Schloss said on Wednesday, look, he's still finalizing a lot of kind of the ins and out of the lineup. And could that be a little bit of coach speak? We'll see, right? I would expect that there's a pretty good idea of what this starting 9 would look like going into this game Friday evening. But he said, look, the top 4, the 4 guys that I know will be at the top of my lineup, Aiden Robbins, Carson Tenney, he said Ethan Mendoza will factor into there, as well as Adrian Rodriguez, all of which are mentioned here above as well.
Look at the strength, too, like where those guys are lined up, like Carson Tenney at catcher, Rodriguez and Mendoza, your middle infield, Aiden Robbins is in center. You've got top 15 talent in college baseball up the middle of the diamond in the center field. Like, that's the kind of stuff that helps you compete in a league like the SEC.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a phenomenal point, actually. I didn't even notice that. Because the majority, pretty much all of them, I guess, in the top 15 are right there in the middle. I mean, yeah, That's phenomenal stuff right there. You can't argue with that. Well, as y'all said, the starting three this weekend are on this list. So let's look at the starting three. On Friday, you're going to have Ruger Riojas. On Saturday, Luke Harrison. And Sunday, Dylan Volantis. Any surprises? I'm a little surprised, but I'll let y'all start.
I'm excited for the opportunity for Ruger Riojas. And I know that, when you see this graphic and you see Volantis at Sunday, look, that's probably going to be the big conversation point. But I'll start with Ruger Riojas because towards the back end of last year, it wasn't necessarily a pretty finish to the season for him. He said, quote, "I hit rock bottom." In that Florida game. Arkansas obviously wasn't a pretty series for him either, but he mentioned he got sick. He lost about 20 or 25 pounds towards the back end of last year and going into the summer. He said he's added about 15 or 20 back, so he's feeling good. He feels like there's life on that fastball, which obviously you need some velocity to start in the SEC. So this is one where, again, had the opportunity to go to the MLB, returns back, and to get the nod for opening day, I think is a cool testimony. And, of course, when you're Ruger Riojas and you get the day one nod, you got to perform. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And, Jeff, I'll let you take it away with Dylan Volantis and Luke Harrison.
Well, there's some wiggle room, I think, because, at some point Volantis could most likely end up being the Friday guy. I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. Yeah. Work him into that role. And even, with Ruger might not stay in the rotation, and that's not a knock on him. I mean, could Flores work his way in there? Could they decide to put Sam Cozart in that role? I don't know. But I say all that to say Luke Harrison is the guy for me. Like, if he can just be the steady hand in that rotation that, hey, if he's starting a Saturday game or if it's a, pushed up series, that Friday game, that second game of a series, if he's going to give you 5 1/3, 6 innings every time out, like that's what Luke Harrison needs to be. It doesn't need to be just like overpowering. He doesn't need to strike out a bunch of guys. He just needs to be a guy that in that Saturday role, that number 2 role, just eats a lot of innings. And either, it's a pivotal role because that's a role where either, you're going to try to win a series for somebody or you're going to try to avoid losing a series. So your number 2 starter, don't scoff at that role. That's really important. So I think just can Harrison pitch he was another guy. And I think, we talked about it. Like once Jared Spencer went down, I think the pitching staff just got taxed about as much as they could, really pushed to their limit. Does he have enough gas in the tank to be that guy all the way through? That's a tall ask, but if he does, hey, that's the kind of guy that you look up at the end of the year and like, yeah, you're competing for a spot in Omaha because he just did his job and was in that number 2 role and did it really consistently well.
When I said I was surprised, I'm not surprised by those 3. We pretty much knew last week it was going to be these 3 going into this weekend. I am surprised, as CJ said, though, with Volantis and Riojas, with the order that they're in. Really thought we'd see Volantis on Friday, Harrison on Saturday, Riojas on Sunday. I'm with you, Jeff. I do think it's a matter of when, not if, that we'll eventually see Volantis on Friday. And then Riojas, will they use him the way they had originally intended to use him at some point, where he's kind of more of a role player than anything, comes in and keep, key situations, maybe starts occasionally, maybe doesn't, maybe close it. That was the original plan for him going into the season last year. And then that kind of went off the rails as injuries began to stack up. But that's what I am wanting to keep eyes on as the season progresses.
2021 Tanner Witt, like, if to give Texas fans an idea of like what that role would look like, and you go back and look at Witt his freshman year. Now, Ruger doesn't have the kind of stuff that Witt had at that point. But to your point, Blake, like, hey, you need him to spot start. If somebody has a rough outing, can he come in and be a guy that gives you 5-6 innings? Can he just be good to get you 3 outs or to get you out of a jam? So yeah, basically any kind of, and I like that role for him, any kind of role. And he proved last year he could handle it. Whatever they threw at him, he filled it. But to your point, CJ, like, yeah, he was sick. That did play a role in kind of him not being able to fill the cup back up by the time he got to the postseason like he would have liked. But yeah, I love having, I think he and Burns really, and to an extent Harrison, like just guys that have been there, done that. Especially when you talk about Cozart and Cross and like the young arms. And I don't even throw Volantis in there because still, I mean, he's only got the 1 year under his belt. Just like the fact that you've got some really big time college experience on the stat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this weekend's games, guys, of course, we start tonight at 6:30, followed by Saturday at 2, and then Sunday at 12. All three games against UC Davis. They'll play a Tuesday game against Lamar. But all of the games on the SEC Network, or SEC Network Plus, I guess I should say. But, yeah, I mean, any expectations, any predictions for this weekend?
I don't know if it's far-fetched to say that this should be a 3-0 weekend for the Longhorns, but that would be my expectation coming into opening weekend. Of course, it's now time to see live pitching that isn't guys that you share a locker room with. So that, of course, we'll see how quickly the bats are acclimated to seeing Division I pitching. But for me, to start at home, to start in front of the Texas faithful at the Dish, I think it's fantastic. The weather right now in Austin is beautiful. As we're recording this, it's about 75, 78 degrees outside. Not a cloud in the sky. I know Saturday might get a little dicey early, but altogether, it should be a fantastic weekend for Texas fans to get out there and watch some baseball to kick off the season.
While you're still figuring out your infield mix and you're waiting, some guys are coming back from injury. I wouldn't be surprised if your offense starts a little slow. Man, your starting pitching needs everything we just talked about. Starting pitching and your bullpen, your staff needs to be every bit as good as advertised starting this weekend in case the bats start a little slow.
Good point. All right, well, we're going to have a rather short episode because we previewed everything in depth last week. But before we get out of here, y'all both have done the press thing with Schloss and Co. This week. Any other takeaways that people should know about before we get out of here?
Yeah, I've got a big one. And Jeff, I know we talked about this a little bit on the Wednesday night live stream, but the mentality coming out of the pen is something that I love. And we heard it from Ruger Riojas. We heard it from Thomas Burns on Wednesday. The idea that Max Wiener has kind of instilled with this team, the mentality of being a hired hitman, I love that.
Yeah,
that sounds fantastic. And, Thomas Burns kind of expanded on that a little bit. He said, look, a hitman knows his job. He doesn't ask for more. He doesn't ask for less. He gets the objective and he goes out and he executes. Coming out of the bullpen, whether I'm getting one guy, two guys, or a full innings worth of work, that is my objective. Get the guys out and go sit down. That's what we got to do. We heard that a couple times. I love that thinking. I think it's, kind of the mentality that you have to have if you're not a frontline starting caliber guy, right? And, of course, we'll see how things change. It's going to be a long season. Injuries happen. But on top of that, that's something I really liked hearing. Schloss also mentioned Kozart as another guy who could get some starting work. I would assume that would mean some of the midweek action as well. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. And then he also mentioned Jonah Williams. And, of course, with Jonah Williams, that's going to be a hot topic at any time he's brought up. But he said he's getting a lot of work right now in right field. And, Jeff, I know that we also talked about just how difficult it is to play right field when it comes to the sunshine, the wind, both going both directions out there as well. But right now, Jonah getting some work on that in right field, something that is relatively new to the general public as well.
I'm excited to see Carson Tenney and Aiden Robbins, their first series as Longhorns. But the guy I'm going to be watching, especially early in the year, Ethan Mendoza, really, he seems like a guy that is hungry to take on that leadership role and kind of understands that as one of the infielders that's got experience playing in the stadium with that name, with Texas across his chest, it seems like he's ready to go to the next level. And I want to see if he takes a step in that direction this weekend.
Well, I bet we will have a load to talk about next week after we get 4 games under our belts. And it'll be a good analysis episode for that first series for sure when we meet back here next week.
We were talking about these sports and big games coming up, start of the season. Blake, for the Texas baseball team, we ready to have Coach Schlossnagle come in here?
Yeah, let's bring him in. Good morning, Coach Schloss. How we doing?
Doing great, guys. Good morning. Happy opening day.
Happy opening day to you, man. Is this Christmas morning? You get to open all your presents today?
Yeah, Christmas morning for sure. I'm not sure opening day takes over Christmas, but it's pretty darn close, at least for me.
Well, Coach, you've got a tremendous team, or what looks like it's going to be a tremendous team. But you got to go out there and play ball, right? What are a couple of things that you're looking for this year to get out of your team to make them meet up to those preseason expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you said, the preseason stuff is nice. It's sexy for fans and notoriety for the program, but we all know you have to go play the game. So the number one thing you always ask and pray for is just a healthy team. If our best players can stay on the field the most, then I like our chances. But from a pure baseball standpoint, I think we want to continue to pitch at a high level. We're going to have to, if a guy like Valanis is going to stay in our rotation, we're going to need somebody to pick up his innings and his, at least some level of his effectiveness. I don't know if anybody can repeat that season again at the end of games. And then from a offensive standpoint, just play really good team offense. One of our goals is to kind of cut down on the strikeouts that we had last year. And I don't like comparing teams to teams because it's not the same players, right? For us to say we want to cut down on strikeouts last year, well, that would really only be applicable if we had all the same players back. We have new players, whether they're better or worse or going to have a different profile is going to be, remains to be seen when we play. But we did, at least in the portal, go out of our way to find guys that are going to, put the ball in play a little bit more, a little bit less swing and miss. But you also, sometimes you give up a little power when you do that. So we'll see. We just have to go play the games. Hopefully we'll get good weather here beginning of the year. Certainly today looks like it's going to be good. So got to play the games. Like Coach Parcells said, that the games will tell you who you are. So you got to go play them.
Hey, Coach, I think one of the most interesting things about college athletics now is with high school recruiting and portal, there's so much roster change every year. So I guess my question, and I ask all the guys we have on here this question, is how soon do you get a feel for your team chemistry nowadays in college sports? Because there is so much overturn every year on rosters.
Yeah, I would say that obviously takes a while. Maybe by about this time of year, you start to get a little bit of, in the fall, maybe you get some clue depending on the leadership that you return. For example, on our pitching staff, I think the culture there is really good. And then from a position player standpoint, when you lose guys like Galvan and Schussler and Jalen, you have to be intentional about doing that. But I feel like that's my job. My job is to create an environment where, we have a culture that leads to kids becoming the best version of themselves, give them an opportunity to become good leaders. So I feel good about where we are right now. But all that stuff is tested when you hit adversity and success, right? And so how do we handle if we get off to a good start? Can we what I call get back to the middle? If things are awesome and if you get your head in the clouds, that's not a good way to play. And if things don't go great at some point during the season, which they're not. I mean, there's gonna be stretches. That's why you play a long season. When you get tested, how do you handle that? Our first test is going to be the lineup that I post tonight, right? So in the inter squad games, everybody gets to play, but we don't have open substitution like Coach Vic and Coach Miller, Sark. When somebody comes out of the game, somebody else goes in, and you don't get to go back, right? And so. And we only play 4 games a week. It's not professional baseball. So the guys that play the best are going to play the most. And sometimes your success is determined by how those guys who aren't playing, especially at the beginning, how they handle that. And if they handle it right, then that chemistry will be nice and good. And when you get tested, you'll handle those times.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about Ruger Riojas. Obviously, he's getting the start tonight, first game of the season. But can you talk a little bit about him? Obviously, he got sick at the end of last year. That definitely influenced his play. He talked about it this week. But what do you expect from him tonight, and how do you see his role evolving over the course of the season?
I think a lot of us we put maybe too much weight on the Friday night starter or the first game of the season because those things can change over the time. Especially, we don't necessarily at this moment have what I would call bell cow, Friday night starter like Spencer. We didn't really have that last year. Spencer was a career reliever, and then he certainly became one of the best starters in the SEC until his injury. So I think what I expect, the thing that I find comfort in with Ruger is we're going to get a lot of strikes. And I always tell the pitchers, like I judge what kind of pitcher you are by my heart rate when you're pitching, right? And so if I'm kind of at ease to a point and that where I know you're going to throw strikes and you're going to field your position and you're going to keep us in the game and you're not going to get spooked by big moments, then you're probably going to pitch a lot. And so Ruger has that experience. He's had the great moments. He's had the tough moments as well. He's a much different pitcher. And if you're coming to the ball game tonight or watching on TV, you'll see that. And so he's way more physical. So we'll see how the roles evolve over time is just by how you pitch. Again, this isn't rocket science. The guys that pitch the best will pitch the most. We'll look at this thing over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. One start won't define, or one appearance won't define anybody. But by the time we get to conference play, 4 weeks from now, we'll know more about our team. And if we have to shuffle some things around, we will.
It's interesting, Coach. 3-game set with UC Davis starts tonight, 6:30 at Dish Falk. I had a question for you. You were new to Texas, and not necessarily new to the baseball field. You played at Texas a bunch of times during your time at TCU and what have you. Was there anything unique to Dish Falk that you had to get acclimated to as a ballpark last year that you probably didn't think of when you were a visitor before?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I obviously played here enough to know that there's a big crown on the field, so you actually hit uphill, which is challenging, and the turf is pretty soft. I knew all those things. I didn't realize a couple of things. I didn't realize how tough right field is. I don't remember too many real tough sun days where the right fielder really had to struggle with the sun. Sometimes the center fielder, depending on the time of year. The warning track is a real issue. There's no difference between the green turf and the brown turf. So when you're running full speed, you're keeping your eyes on the ball. It's really hard to tell where you are. And then the last thing, because I was always in the visitor dugout, except for maybe a regional, super regional when it was hot, the first base dugout at Dish Falk is literally the coldest place in Austin. I mean, it is absolutely frigid, even on like a 50-degree day, because if you were to come and just be around the ballpark all day, because of that roof and the way the sun rotates, I guess, relative to our stadium, our dugout never gets sun ever. So that concrete state, when it's cold, it stays cold. It's like refrigerated. So yeah, it's pretty chilly over there. So even tonight, when it's supposed to be 80 degrees today, at some point in the game, I'm going to have a jacket on because it just gets cold over there.
That's creature comforts for you, Coach. Coach, we talked about a lot of this team and the preseason expectations, lofty that they are. New faces that you mentioned a little bit. Who are some of those new faces that Texas baseball fans need to know?
Yeah, I think on the forefront of that would be, Carson Tenney behind the plate. There's never been a good baseball team without a good catcher. You cannot. You could also say that about shortstop, but the catcher handles the ball more. And so, Carson's is a really good player, and fans are really going to enjoy watching him. They're certainly going to be excited to watch him hit because he's big and strong and has power. But he's a really good catcher, and that handling the pitching staff, making those fringy pitches look like strikes is something he's really good at. And we also have 2 other really good catchers behind him. Andrew Ermis is going to get some opportunities, and a freshman named Presley Corville that's a really, really kind of a baseball rat type guy that I think Longhorn fans are going to love for a long time. So, and then in the outfield, Aiden Robbins, he's as elite of a right-handed hitting outfielder that you're going to find in college baseball. So I'm excited for fans to watch him play. Ashton Larson has a chance to be a nice player for us. And then on the mound, Cal Higgins out of the transfer portal from Western Kentucky is a really good reliever. Kind of going to be not a super big arm guy, but just a ton of strikes and moxie, and has great feel for what he's doing. And then just those freshman pitchers, Sam Cozart, Brett Crossland, Michael Winter, Jack McKernan, Brody Walls. What we want is to look up here in probably a year or two, probably 2 years, and say, wow, look at that pitching staff. Those are all homegrown pitchers, just the way the University of Texas should be, just big, strong, physical pitchers. And hopefully we need to have some of that in the position player group too. Those high-end high school position players are just really tough to keep in the draft these days. So if long-term for this program, we have to get it to the point where our depth is a little better than what it is with elite high school talent, and then we cherry pick the portal from a position player standpoint.
Hey, Coach, is there one area, maybe aspect of the team leading up to the season that maybe is ahead of where you thought it would be as the regular season begins tonight?
Good question. I mean, you'd have to say Adrian Rodriguez playing a really good shortstop because this time last year he was an adequate third baseman, second baseman, left fielder. If you'd have told me he's going to be your starting shortstop next year and you're going to be fired up about it, I would have questioned that. But he lost a bunch of weight. He really invested in himself over the course of the summer. Certainly, he had a big surgery, so we're going to have to monitor that throughout the year. But he's really moving well. He's playing with a lot of energy. He's all over the field. I mean, he's a guy that can't sit still anyway. But that would be one thing. And then the development of those freshman pitchers. Again, they haven't pitched a game yet, but usually when you get the big arm high school pitcher to school, they're not great strike throwers, right? You have to kind of massage it, and I'm sure they'll have their moments, but especially Cozart and Winter, those guys are as good of high school prospect strike throwers as you're going to find come to college. And so when those guys get out there, wow, I'll be interested to see what you guys think, after you see them pitch for a while.
Coach, I got one more for you. You talked about A-Rod, obviously Mendoza at second base as well. But what about the corners? How confident are you in that? Is that still a work in progress? What do you know about first and third at this point?
Yeah. More than likely tonight, Tamo Becerra is going to play third base. I love to say that, Tamo Becerra, right? It makes me sound cool. Anyway, grad transfer from Stanford, just an elite human being, was their starting shortstop last year. Good athlete, can really, move around well. He'll get some opportunities there. If Adrian needs a day, then what a luxury to have that guy to be able to run over to shortstop. And then Casey Borba has done a great job with his body. He didn't play this summer. We sent him to Southern California to really work on how he moves and his body. So he's looking good over there at first base, and he's actually, in the time we've played him at third base, he looks way better than last year. And then a transfer named Josh Livingston from Wichita State, who can play third or first, probably DH a fair amount as well. Those will probably be the guys getting the most time there. So I'm excited about them. Two good right-handed hitters and a left-handed hitter in there as well as with Livingston.
Hey, Coach, I got one final question, and I got to ask it, else the Texas fans will ask if I finally lost the rest of my mind. But Jonah Williams, a lot of Texas fans want to know Jonah Williams, kind of where he's headed in the UT or into his second year, and your expectations for him.
Yeah, Jonah's, it's really nice that he's been able to get a little more prep going into the season than certainly he did last year. Last year he was hurt. He's such a joy to be around. He got a little banged up in bowl practices. So we're still kind of, I really need him for the long haul. And so he's certainly going to play a ton. He'll be in there. As I told you, right field's really tough to play here. And he's only ever played center and left. And we put him out there in right field in the last couple of weeks, and he handled it really well. So those big twitch athletes, you got to be careful on their bodies. So he's certainly going to play a ton, and I'm excited to see him for a full season.
6:30 tonight. You get it first pitch, Coach. I know you get to open your presents, show everybody what you got, and I have some friends that are going to be out there tonight. Hope everybody else makes it out to see Coach Jim Schlossnagle's baseball team for the Longhorns this evening. 3-game set. If you look back as we let you go, Coach, you look back on the weekend come Sunday afternoon, what are you hoping occurred this weekend?
Number one, I just want us to get all the games in. This time of year, you just want to play. And so we may have to dodge some weather tomorrow, but I want to see, starting pitchers go out there, and it'd be interesting to see Valanis and his, first start. Well, he started a couple games for us last year, but just coming off his year, But I'm interested to see our offense. That's an area that we had a great season last year, but we weren't a great offensive team, and we need to play better team offense. So just want our guys to be healthy, and I think if the right players stay healthy and have a good year, then it's going to be an exciting weekend.
Thank you so much, Coach. We appreciate you taking the time. Hook 'em horns.
All right, hook 'em.
We'll be out there this weekend. Take care, Coach.